Hello, and welcome to Mornings with Joel, commercial real estate podcast, where we focus on rising stars and established players in commercial real estate and talk to them about how they are building legacies in today's marketplace. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone that's here with us today. Richard Slaton is back with us. We're very excited to have him with us. And again, as you know, this is the Mornings with Joel CRE podcast. So we're very excited to have you with us today. A very special guest, Richard Slaton. We have called him back for a second time. And Richard, we want to thank you for that and for agreeing to come back on. And I got to be honest, man, it's almost like you're becoming the godfather. You know, we had the president of Bank of America in Atlanta, you know, the city president. Like every question was like, ask Richard, ask Richard, ask Richard. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, Al and I worked together a long time.
Yeah. Well, he's a good guy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
young cat, too. So, you know, very, very happy to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, I'll be with him in about an hour and a half.
Okay. All right. Well, tell him I said what's up.
I will.
So, like I said, it's exciting to have you back. You know, one reason why we wanted to have you back is, unfortunately, the last time you were here, your mother had just passed.
Yes.
And so, you know, we cut the show short on account of that. And so, you know, how have you been adjusting to that? Has everything been going okay with the family and everything?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's still a daily process, man. I mean, you know, it's been literally, it was 8 months to the day, August 17th. And so, you know, my brother and I was just actually over at her house Saturday because we just now got to the place where we can start going through her things. Mm-hmm. So it's still a process. I mean, you know, we're better than we were, you know, 8 months ago, but we getting there.
Yeah, and I understand. You know, it was actually shortly after that I actually lost my pops earlier this year, and
I'm sorry for that.
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate that, and so you know, sharing that pain as well. You know, I certainly can understand that. So, you know, we're back at work. We're trying to make things happen, and you know, appreciate you getting back with us. Mm-hmm. So very good. So I know last time, you know, let's do this just for the sake of, you know, we have thousands of people that are watching these shows. I can say that literally now because we just hit another milestone, the podcast here. You know, what's your position? What's your role? And who are you for all those who don't know? And why do I call you the Godfather? Why does everybody got to talk to you? So what's that all about?
All right. So my name is Richard Slaton. I am a native Atlantan. Work for Bank of America in the Community Development Bank. I serve as Senior Vice President, where I provide debt and equity capital for the purposes of developing affordable housing. In addition to that, I am on the business school faculty at Morehouse College, where I teach real estate finance and investment finance. In addition to that, I am a CCIM instructor where I teach the 101 financial analysis for commercial real estate investment course. And also we have a low income housing tax credit course through the Ward Center that I teach as well. And next year I'll be picking up 102. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I guess you know a little something about commercial real estate, huh?
Right. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. But no, that's great. And I know, you know, your history has been pretty extensive too. You know, your time with Martin and everything else. And I didn't realize and forgot that actually you had worked for, I don't even think I did forget. I don't know if I remember that you worked for Integral at one point in time.
Yes, that's actually where I learned affordable housing and real estate development. I worked there for about 4 years and you know, worked with the great team there. And they're all still there, actually. And I still call on them. They're friends of mine. And, you know, they all took me under their wing and taught me real estate development. So for that, I'm forever grateful.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. So great to have you back, you know, as I mentioned, and you certainly have a wealth of knowledge. So we appreciate you sharing that with us today. You know, one of the things that we kind of picked up on when we were talking with Al the other day was about the fact that Bank of America has committed, I want to say 1.2 billion or some figure very close to that.
Yeah, 1.25 billion, yes.
1.25 billion, okay, toward, well, you tell me, what's this commitment all about? What is it? And, you know, would you explain that?
Yeah, so basically, Bank of America has committed $1.25 billion to be dealt with over the next 5 years. And it's basically about racial equality and diversity. And the areas that the bank are focused on are health, jobs and skills training, affordable housing, and small business. Those are the four areas of focus for the bank and the $1.25 billion commitment. I think last week it was announced that I can't remember how many local nonprofits here, but they received funding of about $1.2 million last week. So I actually, I had the pleasure of working with Al and the team on that entire grant process. So I think that, like I said, that was announced last week, but that's a part of that $1.25 billion commitment. And it's interesting because, with last week with the grant announcements, it was heavily focused on small business and affordable housing. That's kind of where the bulk of the funds went to. But, and like I said, the bank is very, very dedicated to that. So we're trying to, make sure we get these funds out to the entities and to the organizations and people that we can help the most.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. So explain that a little bit more, because you did mention grants. So was that money that just went to the nonprofits that were grants, or did some of it go to for-profit institutions as well, as long as they were focused on affordable housing?
Well, as long as as long as they're focused on affordable housing, it could take that shape. But it's kind of with how the funds are deployed. I think it is kind of based upon the situation and the circumstances. So it could come in as a grant in some forms of fashion if it makes sense, or it could come in as a low interest loan if it makes some sense in some way, or it could come in as some type of hybrid kind of equity position. So it really just depends on the situation. So even with that $1.25 billion, I mean, it's really the bank getting to know who the entities are that are looking to receive those funds, and kind of see what their goals and objectives are and what their needs are. Then from there we can kind of come up with a tailor-made solution just for that organization.
Okay. All right. So that's interesting. So as you mentioned, it kind of fills that equity stack, possibly either as mezz, or it could be preferred equity, or it could be a grant,
right,
or anything like that. From what you're saying, is that a situation where Bank of America would require that they issue the debt as well, or?
And more often, let me say it like this, Joe. We would like to have the entire relationship. Ideally, yeah, we would like to have the debt as well, because what the bank ultimately wants to do is, establish the entire relationship with an entity, not just give them a grant or provide them a loan, or it's really about looking at the business as a whole and identifying the needs of the business. How can we partner with the business to help it grow? And so what that means is we'll bring the entire bank to bear. So whether that be the treasury platform, whether that be, like you said, the construction loan platform in the case of affordable housing, whether it be grants, we want to bring that entire relationship to the client in order to help them.
Okay. That's quite interesting. So in the case of affordability, are we talking about the project has to be 100% affordable, or a percentage affordable, or does it depend on the size of the project, or the size of the whole capital stack, or what?
Well, so we talk about affordability, and I that's a great question, Joe, because I think affordability means different things to different people.
Right.
When we're looking at affordability, basically what we're looking at is if let's just use an example. We have a 100-unit apartment complex, right? And so let's say if we have 50% of the units at, I don't know, call it 50% of the area median income. And then we have the other 50% at 80% of the area median income. That blended AMI is about 60%. area median income. So that's kind of where the bank's sweet spot is as it relates to affordable housing. And if you look at what the area median income here in Atlanta is, I want to say it's about $93,000 a year. So if you're looking at families making 60% of that, which is around mid-50s to $60,000 a year, so you're really talking about your teachers, your firemen, your policemen. That could easily fall under the definition of what they call attainable housing or workforce housing, really. But that's kind of where the bank focus is.
Okay, gotcha. So that's interesting because you know this as well as I do. The challenge always is, you got this sweet piece of property. It's in the urban core, in the CBD, right?
Yeah.
The cost of the dirt is so expensive that you almost have to be above market. So, and that's why I was asking that question, because if you're at, I believe you said you were giving an example of a whole development, 100% of it being at 60% AMI. I think that's what you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
So, right. So a project like that could be a little difficult in an urban setting, as you know. But if you're stepping maybe into an area that needs improvement, I don't want to specify any streets and everybody go running over there. But there are certain neighborhoods that where you might be able to get cheaper dirt and make those numbers pencil.
Well,
that would be the issue.
Yeah, I think so. And I'll tell you the way I've seen these deals work. And it's directly to your point, Joe. But because land costs can be so high that it makes an affordable housing project, not feasible. What I've seen happen is, especially when you're dealing with, a housing authority or some type of government agency that owns land or something like that, or it could even be a private owner. But the way I've seen it done is they'll enter into long-term ground leases. And so basically those long-term ground leases, it helps the bank because the bank's comfortable with that. And so that kind of defrays that land cost conversation, right? Because now you're dealing with the ground lease payment as opposed to a straight out sale. And so when you do that, and then you get the allocation of the federal and state low-income housing tax credits, which further kind of helps with that capital stack. And the last piece of it really is a construction loan. It's a construction loan and a perm loan takeout. And so, because let's say if we look at call it a 4% bond deal. So what I'm about to say is you have two rounds of low-income housing tax credits. You have the 4% bond deals, which is considered not so competitive, but then you have the competitive 9% low-income housing tax credits round. So typically with the 4% bond deals, that low-income housing tax credit piece kind of takes care of about 30 to 40% of your equity, right? And then you have the ground lease in there. So you probably have a perm debt of somewhere around 50, 60% loan to cost. So that's what makes those deals work.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I think the first thing that you said kind of was news to me about the bank being comfortable with a ground lease.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of institutions that are not, but that works really well in areas where you're trying to do a public-private partnership.
Yeah.
You got the municipality that's willing to kick in the land. They're not going to sell it to you, but they'll do a ground lease.
That's right.
You see a ton of those up in DC and places like that. So, that actually works. So that's interesting as to how that would all pencil together. I was wondering if you were going to mention LIHTC being part of it, because you still kind of need that to bridge that gap.
Oh, yeah. That's an integral part of it. The low-income housing tax credits. I mean, I think without those, it'd be tough to get them done. Yeah.
Hard to make them pencil without that. So that makes good sense. All right. Well, that's good to know. What size, and obviously Bank of America can do any size deal. I get that. But from a equity standpoint, how big of a equity check, or what range of equity check is the bank interested in writing, especially with this initiative that they have? Because Rich, you know this as well. Trying to get equity below $5 million or a check below $10 million can be very difficult.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So The typical affordable housing deal, the equity piece normally comes up to anywhere between 10 to 20 million, give or take. And so, with those deals too now, when the bank is placing equity in those deals, they in effect become the limited partner, right? And so as a result of that, with those tax credits, that there is a 15-year compliance period. So that means the bank's with you the whole step of the way. So, we have to make sure the project is performing to Department of Community Affairs standards. We got to make sure, the financial reporting is solid, during that time period. But that's, that's what happens when the bank puts that equity and they become that limited partner. And, like I say, anywhere between 10, 20 million on average.
Okay. All right. So that's generally what they're looking for. Are you looking to get involved in any deals that are not affordable?
We're actually looking at that, Joe. And so, primarily it's all about the low income housing tax credit play, right? But we know that program, probably needs some modernization over the near term. So we are looking at, how to go about financing an affordable housing deal, that doesn't involve low-income housing tax credits. I mean, that's kind of where we are, kind of going through that process to see how we can actually make it work.
Okay, gotcha. And as regards these the grants that you were talking about, what size are those generally you see going out the door?
Well, the ones that we did last week, they were ranging anywhere from, I want to say 25,000 up to maybe 100, give or take, something like that. And those grants are typically for kind of assisting with technical assistance, is helping with short-term working capital, is those kinds of things. But those grants, we normally have 2 rounds of those.
Okay.
So that happens twice a year.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So there's a cycle that's involved with that. Understand that. And generally on that equity side, what's y'all normally looking at from a equity sponsor participation side of it? 90-10 or 95-5?
Well, from the affordable housing, the low income housing tax credit standpoint, we're putting up basically all of the equity with the exception of the land, for the most part.
Oh, okay.
As we move toward this $1.25 billion commitment, I think we're still trying to work through that. And I think, Joe, that's on a case-by-case basis. I have seen it 90-10. I've also seen it 80-20. I think it all depends on the sponsor and the deal itself. Okay.
Well, that makes sense. It all depends on that. So, all right. Well, this is good information. I didn't really plan on getting this deep in the woods with you, but I couldn't resist.
That's quite all right. And I knew after you talked to Al, I said, Al probably going to have him hit me with some of these questions.
Yeah, because I would have just, after the call, I would have just said, hey, let me get Rich to the call and ask these detailed questions.
Yeah.
But for everybody's benefit, this is good. So, and it's important because, one thing, and I got to say even myself, a lot of times you look at these, mega banks, and the feeling is, they're not going to participate in nothing that I got going on, or they're too big, or they only want to deal with the Carter and the Holders of the world, and those type companies. So to know that Bank of America is basically saying, hey, we're willing to, I don't want to say lower our standards. That's not the right word. Open the door to emerging managers and emerging players. Yeah.
And can I add something to that, Joe? Because you make a valuable point.
Yeah.
What I would say is if you have any ambition or are looking to get into development, or especially affordable housing development, my recommendation would be build a relationship with a banker in that space long before you even have a deal. And the reason I say that is because, you build that relationship with that banker you'll begin to understand what the underwriting criteria is. What do the banks look for? How would they look at a certain type of deal? And so when you do, come across that deal, and like you were saying, Joe, you get that dirt and you can make it pencil.
Mhm.
See, then you have a direct person to go to that can run point for you internally to get it done. And I'm about to tell y'all what happens behind the scenes. So a lot of times, like in my role, for example, I'm on conference calls with, the credit execs and the risk partners and, the internal team. And, I'm advocating for deals. So it's not we just talking about something and putting a stamp or not. I mean, more often than not, it comes down to someone advocating for the merits of the sponsor and the deal.
Mhm.
And by building that relationship long before you have a deal helps that case, that the part that people don't see, go a long way and make it happen.
Yeah, yeah. That actually is a very, very good point. I think of a lot of the, younger ones that are in the space, and I was the same way. I mean, you want everything today,
Yeah.
right? You want everything to happen today. But if you're, 20 years old, you just don't have that track record of knowing people that long to have that relationship.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And it just takes time. You gotta take time to build that. And it should come naturally. It shouldn't be a forced arrangement either. So
That's what I think. I remember a graduate school professor of mine said, he said, the greatest predictor of success is one's ability to delay gratification.
Mm.
You can do that, be all right.
Yeah, that's a real good way to put it. So thank you for sharing that. Let me do this. Since so many people know you and we've got a lot of folks on the call here today, we're going to go ahead and open up the line a little bit early. We're about 7 minutes earlier than we generally do. But if you guys have some questions, you can go ahead and put those in the chat. And, we will be more than happy to listen to those and to get those over to Richard and go from there. So let's see, let me minimize that. So yeah, we'll get that going. All right. So with that being said, now let me ask you one other thing. I would assume that this strategy related to affordable housing will work with, it's not just development, but it will also apply to value add plays.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's both new development and acquisition rehab. Absolutely.
Okay, gotcha. And what unit count is the bank generally going to be looking for? Is it more based on dollars as opposed to unit count?
Yeah, it's more on the dollar value. So, with an acquisition rehab type play, I would tend to say, in my experience, those fall under that 4% non-competitive round scenario. A good example of one is, if you know where Capitol View is over off Metropolitan, Columbia Residential did that deal, and I want to say the grand opening is going to be September 14th, I believe. But we financed that deal. So that deal was like 120 units. If I remember correctly, the acquisition rehab, the total deal value was somewhere around 28, 30 million or something like that. That would be a great example of what a value play, as you said to Joe, would look like. It's that Capitol View deal that's on Metropolitan Parkway.
Okay, gotcha. Now that sounds a little small. When you were mentioning that the average check you guys are looking for 10 to 20 million. Mm-hmm. So I guess you will go a little bit smaller in a case like that.
Well, that was 120 units. Yeah. So yeah, that deal size was, like I said, 28 million, give or take. It was kind of within that zone.
Okay. Yeah. Probably about 10 million in equity, maybe somewhere in that range.
Yeah, maybe 10 million. I think. Well, it was actually higher. Yeah, it was actually maybe, well, if I remember correctly, 14 million in equity. Okay. Yeah, and then the rest was in debt.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. All right. Well, let's see here. We've got Uriyah here every week. How you doing, man? And if you're not talking, please mute. So since we are recording, we appreciate that. Uriyah wanted to ask, what are some of the high-level criteria for the grant process?
There's an application that comes out, and I say it's come out twice a year. And the first thing we want to do is get you on that mailing list. So if you want to do that, send me your contact information. I'll make sure I get it over to, the market president's office, which is over there where Al is, and make sure they put you on the list. Now, the criteria would be, if you're applying for a grant, make sure that you'll be addressing issues around affordable housing, around small business, around health, around, economic mobility. Those would be the 4 criteria. So you don't have to address all of them, but pick one. So as you're applying for the grant and completing that application, because that's when you get on that list, the market president's office will send you an application when they come out, or send you a link to the application so you can go on there and apply for it. But then you just make sure as you're writing up the purpose of the grant, it falls into one of those 4 buckets.
Okay, hopefully that, yeah. Okay, cool. All right, here's another guy that most people don't know, Quinn Green.
Yeah. How's it going, sir?
Quinn is everywhere lately, man. Every time I pick up
I know, right?
Quinn's face, man. Good.
Yeah.
All right. What resources and relationships would you recommend an emerging affordable housing developer concentrate on pursuing establishing to get started in the game?
That's a great question, Quinn. I think the first thing is you establish that relationship with the banker, and like I said, that's long before you even have a deal. I would also recommend, if you have 0 experience in affordable housing, get it and do it. And you can do it, in my opinion, a couple of ways. You can actually go work for an affordable housing developer, to gain that experience and understand how it works, build those relationships with, the Invest Atlantas, the Atlanta Beltline, the Department of Community Affairs. So another way I would recommend is if you have site control of some dirt that's a viable affordable housing option, you partner with one of those affordable housing developers. And now, what in a case like that, I'll just be honest. In a case like that, you'll probably give up the lion's share of your deal on the first one. But, this is a marathon we running and not a sprint. Mm-hmm. So you get, that couple of deals like that under your belt that gives you an opportunity to get the experience, and you're in the ownership structure of the deal. And, you'll get a chance to, you'll make a little bit of money along the way. And then from that point, you can branch out on your own. So emerging affordable housing developers, 3 things: build a relationship with a banker, either go work for an affordable housing developer to get that experience, or get site control of some dirt and partner with an affordable housing developer. Those would be the 3 high-level things I would say, Quinn, as an emerging affordable housing developer.
All right. Well, that all makes sense. Mm-hmm. And we got a GC joining the line right now, so we'll let her join in on that. And Quinn, I got to blame you because Richard had gone over that, and you got on late and asked that question after he had just answered it. So I got to give you that right cross because of that. So, so it's all good. All right. Any trade associations or groups that you would recommend becoming affiliated with and joining? Obviously, we know who's going to come at the top of that list. But go ahead.
I would definitely say first the Georgia CCIM chapter. I mean, I think that's a fantastic chapter. I think the Institute as a whole is fantastic. So I would say that. I would say specific to affordable housing, I would say there's a Georgia Affordable Housing Coalition. I would say join that coalition. I'm a member of it. And we actually meet every quarter. And so I'm on what we call the Qualified Allocation Plan Committee. And that Qualified Allocation Plan is what we call the Bible of affordable housing. Because if you, matter of fact, that would be something good to do. If you have time, go download the 2022 Georgia Qualified Allocation Plan. In that, it'll tell you all of the underwriting criteria that's needed to get a low-income housing tax credit award. So I'm on that committee where we, work through that every year because it's updated every year. And we look at it and see if we need to make any changes to it. We lobby at the lobby government, in terms of what changes needed to be made. So the Georgia Affordable Housing Coalition would be one. I would say get involved with House ATL, which is another entity which is within the city of Atlanta, and that's the entity that's highly focused on affordable housing. So I would say those organizations, and get to know the other players like the now Atlanta Neighborhood Development Partnership people, and get to know the developers around. So I think that'll help. And I think over there with Sinead, HDDC, I mean they've broken ground on a project over there on Auburn Avenue, which is fantastic. So I would say getting involved with people like that, and that will help with kind of strengthening that affordable housing acumen and build those relationships.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. So it kind of goes back to the fundamentals. It's about who you know, and trying to build those relationships. And I appreciate the point you made earlier. Just to kind of reiterate, this is the ability and the benefit of having somebody behind the curtain that advocates for you.
Yep.
Inside the company.
Yep.
So that you're not just trying to push it all from the outside. Because as well as I do, a lot of these deals can be dead even before you find out about it on the outside, because the people on the inside are like, this ain't going nowhere.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And I'll tell you, that's the piece that people don't typically see.
Yeah.
But that's the piece that's the most critical.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because you got to have somebody on the inside that can advocate for your deal for you, and basically talk about the merits of it. And that, to me, that's where the relationship piece come in, because it's not, if you have a relationship with someone, it's not something that you have to rehearse, or you have to come up with, some sound bites, if you will. I mean, if you have a genuine relationship with your banker and your banker has a genuine one with you, it's easy to step into those meetings and advocate because you know them,
Yeah. And I'll take it even a step further than that. A lot of times with a good relationship, that advocate on the inside could tell you how to structure the deal in order to get it through.
Exactly.
This is what underwriting is looking for. This is the way this needs to be positioned. This is what the returns need to be. And you can save a ton of time by just having that insight, that intel.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's valuable. That's the gospel I preach, Joe. With the banker.
That's right. That's right. Very, very good point. Very good point. Let me ask this also. There's been a lot of attention given lately to the life science space. Is Bank of America doing anything in that space? And does it tie in at all with the $1.25 billion that the bank has allocated? I know that might be a little separate from your affordable housing space, but do you know anything about that?
Well, I've heard about it, and the bank is taking a look at it, life science, and I would also kind of put that in the spin of that might fall more under what we call environment, social governance, that ESG acronym. So it might be more over in that way, but the bank has not had any direct involvement to date, Joe. But I do know that there have been conversations internally, and you'll probably see something over the next year or so come out about that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know one thing about banking is they generally want to see where others have had success. And once they see that, it's like, hey, well, let's get down, with that.
Yeah. Banks are risk adverse. They're not gonna go in first. Now they want to see how it works.
Yeah.
It's interesting is that it was that same thing with these what do they call these micro units that are starting to make headway.
Yeah.
The concept's great, but a lot of banks, including myself, to be candid, we're trying to see how it's going to work. We look at it, we think it's interesting, but we want to see how it works before we jump into it.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring that out. We got a deal like that on our desk right now, and it's if you talk to the sponsor, there's tremendous demand. Everybody wants it.
Yeah.
Right, and you're saying, okay, we got COVID, we got these other things. There was a big shared space deal that we had looked at in LA. It was kind of a similar thing, and obviously when COVID broke out, that just kind of crushed that. What's your thought? Just you seeing it, and I can understand a bank being adverse, but since we have a deal like that on our desk right now, I'm actually curious as to your perception on it? You know, what do you think is the bank's hesitancy in looking at a micro unit type deal?
Well,
Development, by the way, in an urban core.
yeah. So the major issue that the banks are trying to understand is how is the common areas treated. So with those micro units, if I understand it, is like each unit, you have a bedroom and each unit has its own bathroom, but the common areas are the living room and the kitchen, stuff like that. And so I really think it's more of a, psychological, how do we get over not looking at this like a rooming house, if you will? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is how do we actually finance it? That can you get insurance on it, if stuff like that. So it's really not. Now I tell you, I've seen it done though. Mm-hmm. It's done in places like Seattle, Washington, where I've seen it done, and it was pretty successful. Mm-hmm. And so actually what I've been trying to do, Joel, is find out who financed that deal in Seattle, because I'll tell you, it's not the major banks that did that. It's probably a smaller regional bank in that area of the country. And so what I'm trying to do is find out who that banker is and just talk to them about, how did they get comfortable with it? How did they underwrite it from a risk standpoint? From a cash flow standpoint, how did it look? I would say I think it's going to make its way to this market, Joe. I just think right now, most of the banks, and I'm talking about, us, the Wells, the JP Morgans, all of them, we just trying to figure out how does it work, and can we see it be successful in this market?
Yeah. Well, that's the $1 million question, right?
That's the $1 million question.
Yep. Try to see how to figure it out. Now, Quinn has got back with us here. He said, if you could dig in a little bit deeper, how would you find an affordable housing developer to partner with? I would think some of that is through those networking groups that you were talking about, but what would you say to that?
Yeah, listen, with the Georgia Affordable Housing Conference, mm-hmm. It's typically in Savannah every September, and every affordable housing developer on the East Coast is there, all of them. All the affordable housing developers, all of the government officials, all of the bankers, everybody's in one place, and we're there for about 2.5 days. So that would be a great place to meet affordable housing developers. Also, you can actually go out to Georgia DCA, or Georgia Department of Community Affairs website. And especially, I think now would be a good time to do it, because they're taking applications for the 4% bond round, which is due in October. Mm-hmm. And they publish a list of developers that applied. They had a project and that applied for those 4% deals. That would be a great way to find out who those developers are in this market as well.
Okay. Very good point. Very good point. So appreciate that. And that conference will probably be a good one to attend, because obviously Savannah's not too far away. So it'll be a nice little break to get away and get down there. So bringing that out. Let me do this also, because we've been focused on affordable housing. And for those who joined us late, we're talking about the $1.25 billion that Bank of America has committed toward emerging managers, developers, and people that are. Give me that again, Richie. You said small business.
Small business.
What were the others?
Yeah, small business, affordable housing, healthcare, economic mobility.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. So when you talk about economic mobility, what would be a sample situation or client in that space? So we're talking about the scooters that you're seeing around I'm joking, man. I know we talking about that economics, but I'm just playing. But
so we use the term economic mobility. It's basically, you're a small business and you need some technical assistance to kind of help your business grow, or you need to have more operating capital, because you see an opportunity for your business to grow, or if you need to expand your space, or you need to find an additional space because your business has gotten to the point that you can support a second or third location. So that's what we mean by economic mobility. So taking a small business, looking at ways to help it grow, basically.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And actually that makes a lot of sense, because one thing I remember, I don't know where I was at on the panel or somewhere, but the things that you did as a business to make it to, let's say, $1 million in revenue is not going to be the same thing to take you to 10 million.
Exactly.
Restructure that business altogether.
That's
and to get from 10 to 100 million, you got to restructure it again.
That's right.
In order to make that leap. So this capital actually comes into play with that. So that's very good. And then you mentioned about healthcare. I would think life science would play into that dramatically, but you said you haven't done any life science deals at all.
Yeah.
But it seems like there would be a symbiotic relationship between those two areas of investment.
Yeah, I agree, John, and I do think it'll get to that place once we go through all this vetting and having internal conversations about it, and I think it'll probably land, right there. But you're right. I mean, life sciences. I mean, it is a relative of health, because it falls under that broad umbrella. So I do think at some point it will kind of align, from an internal banking perspective, it will align with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So sounds good. Now, for the sake of our audience, we had a tax credit podcast that we did probably about a year and a half ago. Just to get more in the weeds on that, because most people don't understand what it is, and you have multiple tax credits, right? You got new market tax credits, you have LIHTC, you have these others. So if you can explain that a little bit, what's the difference between a 4%, 9%? Just some of those details for the sake of our audience, if you don't mind.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure. So when you hear the word LIHTC, what it is the low-income housing tax credit.
Mm-hmm.
The low-income housing tax credit can take two forms. It can take the 9% competitive form. And basically what that means is, you submit an application to the Department of Community Affairs. And the competitive round is literally what that word means, competitive. So it's a scoring process.
Mm-hmm.
And that qualified allocation plan, it really gives you details on how you can maximize the scoring on your deal. Like, for example, if you were offering resident services at your development, so whether that be the same stuff we're talking about with the 1.25 billion, the job training, the daycare, stuff like that, that gives you additional points. If you're partnering with a municipality, that gets you more points. So you go through that process with the 9% round, and if your application is selected, just from a mathematical standpoint, with the 9%, the reason it's competitive because those tax credits typically represent about 70% of your capital stack. So just think about that for a minute. If you win a 9% deal, 70% of your capital is coming from the tax credit. So that means you only need 30% of debt or other funds. That's why it's competitive. All right. So then we have the 4%. We call it non-competitive. I'm doing my hands like that for a reason, because now it's starting to have some merit of being competitive, but just not to the same level as the 9%. But with the 4%, it's typically, I'm going to say, somewhat competitive. Mm-hmm. But with those deals, it's more or less the 4% typically means bonds. So you're awarded tax exempt bonds to your project, and typically Invest Atlanta basically issues those bonds to a project. And if you are awarded bonds to the 4% project, those tax credits automatically come with it. So that's why we say it's non-competitive. And so what I've seen is typically your larger deals typically use the bond 4% credit platform as opposed to the 9%. And so with those tax exempt bonds, the way the bank play a role in it, we'll basically credit enhance the bonds. And, we do have the ability to buy those bonds as well as buying the credits, or it can be like a private placement where you have other investors in the bonds, but then we have a trustee to administer those bonds. I mean, it does get complex, but the 4% deal is like I say, non-competitive. If you have site controls, I would say if you're doing a 4% deal, you're typically looking at greater than 100 units or more, 100, 200, 300 unit type deals. The 9%, you're probably looking at anywhere between 50 to 100 in terms of unit size. Mm-hmm. So that's the low income housing tax credit piece of it. Then you have the new market tax credits. New market tax credits operate like low income housing tax credits, with the major difference is new markets are used for basically commercial space in underserved markets, or it's used for sale housing, affordable housing, right? So the low income housing tax credit piece is typically for your rental affordable housing. You can use new market tax credits for commercial and or for sale affordable housing. So that's the main difference between the two. And then you also have, what we call historic tax credits as well, because that's in my group also. Okay. And so basically historic tax credits, they are typically awarded to deals, and they're typically of a rehab nature, as you talked about earlier, Joe. Mm-hmm. And the building itself may have some historical significance. And so what we want to try to do is preserve that historical significance. And what we'll do is we'll issue, historic tax credits on that project. The bank, we've done it over in Grant Park. We've actually worked with, a lot of these institutions like the Trust for Public Land, for example, and we've done those kinds of deals. So tax credit, those are the three primary ones. You have the low income housing tax credit, you have the new markets tax credits, and you have the historic tax credits.
Yeah, yeah, those are the primary ones. You've got conservation tax credits as well, and film tax credits, and it just goes on and on and on. So,
it does.
There's a lot of them. Let's see here. Well, let me round out this just to make sure that everyone got that information. So you mentioned the 9% tax credit generally covers about 70% of the equity or cash needed in particular getting a deal done. 4%, what percent of deals do you see that normally cover?
It typically covers about 30 to 40% of the capital needed.
Right. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to think if there's any other tax credit questions. I think that pretty much covered it. But that's an area where a lot of people get confused, is understanding how those tax credits work.
Yep.
Yeah. So I wanted to bring that up. Also, a lot of times in certain situations, these tax credits are also stackable. So you might be able to use them multiple tax credits on deals. So okay, let's see here. Will Smith had a question regarding the affordable housing class you teach. How can we attend the class, or is it part of a CCIM candidate curriculum?
Yeah, so the low-income housing tax credit course that I teach, it is through CCIM, and I do it virtually. Let's see, we've had one in March, we had one in June, and we have one more coming up in October. So you could probably go out there to the CCIM website now and just click on the courses, and you'll see the low-income housing tax credit course, and it's actually taught by myself and a gentleman by the name of Jeff Engelstad. So we actually walk through the process of putting together a low-income housing tax credit deal.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate that. And hopefully, Will, that answered your question. And then, Quinn, curious to hear the perspective on the 20,000 new affordable housing unit goal that the Mayor of Atlanta has during this term. Is it realistic, feasible, and what has to happen in terms of path to succeed to reach that goal? So Very loaded question there, but a good question.
That's a great question, and the answer is I do think it's feasible, and I do think it's attainable. But I do think the challenges would be making sure everybody's on the same page. And when I say everybody, we all understand that affordable housing is an issue, both from stakeholders, perspective, from banking, from government. We all understand it's an issue, but I do think we all have to get on the same page to be able to address it. I think we're all trying to address it. We all have the best intentions, but I think to some degree we're operating in silos. But I think once we get to a point where we're all collaborating together, I think that's when it can be addressed. And I do also think we need to make sure we have a united front when we're talking to the Department of Community Affairs about what this goal is, because we can have that goal and it can be, a great one. It can, we can kind of have a plan, but guess what? If DCA is oversubscribed on the bonds and they can't issue any more bonds, or they're backlogged, on the tax credit side. So it has to be a concerted effort by everybody. So that was a long way to say, yeah, I think it's attainable. I think we could do it. But the key is going to be making sure all stakeholders are looking at it the same way.
Yeah, very, very good answer. What is the city of Atlanta doing in regard to help contribute toward that goal? Are they, contributing land? Are they doing this through Invest Atlanta? Are they doing it through another provision? How is this all coming together from the city's perspective? What are they kicking in?
Well, what they're trying to do is, that's what House ATL is about, to try to help address, that's going to be the mechanism used to try to address it. I'm actually on the advisory board of House ATL, and you're right. Invest Atlanta plays a role in that. Atlanta Housing, plays a role in that, and because Atlanta Housing owns a significant amount of land in and around Atlanta that's perfect for affordable housing. The city has also, come out with this program to work with churches that have excess land, for the purposes of developing affordable housing. So they're trying to go at it from different perspectives, and I think they're doing a good job. And I think like I say, if everybody can get on the same page, I think we'd be wildly successful.
All right, sounds good. So how many years is this supposed to happen? In what time frame, I should say?
Well, we're at 22 by 2026.
Okay, all right. So it's a tight window.
Yep. So everybody's trying to get it done now.
All right. Well, hey, we've got the information, we've got the access to capital, which is what this is all about. B of A can help with the access of capital, and we've got someone that, if you've got a tight team, will vouch for us behind the curtains.
Absolutely, that's the name of the game.
Absolutely. So that's a beautiful thing. Well, Rich, we're kind of at the end of our window here. We got about 3 minutes left, but what would you say is the that you would like to see as a result of all these initiatives? The bank has a ton of money they're trying to get out there on the street. The city has this housing initiative. What would you like this to all look like, a few years from now? Let's say 4 years from now, 2026.
I want to see people of color in a better financial position, and I'm talking about from a net worth perspective, because that's really what it's about. When you talk about racial equality and things like that, it really comes down to let's see what we can do to not only have an equitable quality of life, but also have a growing net worth as well. So that's what I want to see happen.
Yeah. Well, no, that's a very good point, because I've given a lot of seminars over the years about generational wealth and creating a family bank, and there's simple fundamental things that a lot of minorities just miss out on.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, there's 2 times in life where people get chunks of money, and that's the death of a loved one through insurance and owning real estate.
Yep.
That's generally it. Hit the lottery, right? But other than that, that's pretty much it.
That's right. That's
right. So if you could just start with those fundamentals, you can really start moving your household forward generationally. So
that's absolutely correct.
Yeah, so it's not that complicated, and but along the way, you need a good banker like Richard.
There you go. That's what I'm here for.
There you go. Absolutely. So, well, hey, man, this has been fantastic. The team has asked me to do this. I'm going to try to find a better way to do this. But if you've enjoyed watching this podcast, we ask you to subscribe or click the like button below. I'm sure there'll be one below. And then there's something else I'm supposed to say. Share this with, actually, I always screw this up because I don't do this for this, right? No, I don't do it for the publicity. But anyway, if you like the podcast, please subscribe, share with your friends, and do whatever else needs to be done to keep us on the air. So we appreciate that. But Richard, hey, I appreciate it. Like I said, I do this because I enjoy having these conversations. This is just something that's wonderful for me. And I certainly appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights. I see why now you are the godfather for the city of Atlanta. So we appreciate all your valuable insights. And we'll let you have the final word. Is there anything else you want to share with us before we wrap up for the day?
Hey, I just want to thank you all for being here. And Joel, I want to thank you and your team for having me on. I know the first time we did it, mentally, honestly, I was in a different place. So I really wasn't able to share my best with you. So I'm very thankful and humbled that you allowed me to come back to do it. And so I hope it was helpful, and just know that I'm here as a resource for you guys if you ever need anything.
All right. No, I greatly appreciate that. I think it was fantastic. I'm sure all of our guests today, viewed it as a fantastic podcast as well. And Rich, look forward to working with you, man.
I look forward to working with you too. And everybody take care. Have a great week.
Yep, absolutely. See you guys. Have a good one.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Mornings with Joel CRE podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to write a brief review. And as always, continue to invite, share, and subscribe.